This opening isn't just about another championship fight. It could be the night that completely changes how the MMA world remembers Islam Makhachev. In just a few weeks, Islam Makhachev will step into the octagon against Ian Garry. At first glance, it looks like a familiar story, a dominant champion defending his title against a dangerous challenger eager to shock the world. But beneath the surface, the stakes are far greater than a championship belt. For Ian Garry, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. A victory would instantly transform him from one of the UFC's brightest prospects into a two-division champion and one of the biggest names in the sport. For Islam, however, the fight carries the weight of history. This isn't simply about extending a winning streak or collecting another title defense. It's about reaching a level where his name can no longer be mentioned alongside the greatest fighters of all time. It has to be placed among them. A win here would move Islam another step toward one of the most debated titles in combat sports, the greatest mixed martial artist ever. That doesn't mean Ian Garry is being overlooked. Far from it. Garry presents a challenge unlike anyone Islam has faced before. Standing 6'3" with outstanding movement, sharp striking, and a constantly evolving all-around game, he brings a style that could create entirely new problems for the lightweight king. Many fans are already assuming Islam will cruise to another victory. But that's a dangerous assumption. Garry has repeatedly shown that he belongs among the elite, and if everything comes together on fight night, he has the skill set to push Islam further than many people expect. That's exactly why this matchup is so fascinating. History is waiting on one side. A massive career-defining upset is waiting on the other. And that's what makes this one of the biggest fights of the year. If Islam gets his hand raised, he won't just defend another championship. He'll officially break one of the most untouchable records in UFC history. For more than a decade, Anderson Silva's incredible 16-fight UFC winning streak has stood as one of the promotion's greatest achievements. Fighter after fighter has come close to matching it, yet every single one eventually fell short before reaching that historic milestone. Since Silva's legendary run ended more than 13 years ago, countless champions have tried to rewrite the record books. None of them could. Kamaru Usman came close. Merab Dvalishvili built an incredible streak of his own. Several dominant champions looked capable of surpassing Silva's mark. But none of them actually did it. That alone shows just how difficult sustained greatness really is inside the UFC. One bad night. One perfectly timed punch. One submission. That's often all it takes for a legendary run to disappear forever. Islam now stands on the edge of doing what nobody else has managed for over a decade. Victory over Ian Garry would give him 17 consecutive UFC wins, placing him alone at the top of the record books. Records in MMA are made to be broken. Some, however, survive generations. This is one of those records. And if Islam claims it, there's a real chance it could stand for many years to come. What's even more remarkable is how those victories have been earned. 7 of them would come in championship fights spread across 2 different weight classes. That's a level of consistency achieved by only a handful of fighters in UFC history. But the records don't stop there. Winning this fight would also place Islam inside one of the most exclusive clubs the sport has ever seen. Only 4 champions have successfully defended titles across 2 different divisions. Daniel Cormier accomplished it after conquering both light heavyweight and heavyweight. While most of his legendary career was built at 205 pounds, he also defended the heavyweight championship against Derek Lewis, proving he could succeed at the highest level in both divisions. Henry Cejudo joined that elite company after winning championships at flyweight and bantamweight. His victories over some of the sport's biggest names cemented one of the most impressive championship runs of the modern era, including a memorable title defense against the legendary Dominick Cruz. Amanda Nunes achieved the same feat by dominating both bantamweight and featherweight. Her reign at 135 pounds is widely regarded as one of the greatest in women's MMA history, while successfully defending the featherweight title further strengthened her legacy as perhaps the most accomplished female fighter the sport has ever seen. Then came Jon Jones. His reign at light heavyweight became the standard every future champion would be measured against. Years later, he captured heavyweight gold and successfully defended it as well, adding yet another chapter to an already legendary career. Still, every one of those accomplishments has sparked debates among fans. Some questioned the timing of Daniel Cormier's heavyweight defense. Others argued Dominick Cruz was no longer in his prime when Cejudo defeated him. Jon Jones' heavyweight defense also drew criticism because Stipe Miocic had spent years away from competition before returning. Every legendary resume seems to come with an asterisk in someone's eyes. Islam's situation feels different. If he defeats Ian Garry, he'll accomplish it while competing in 2 of the deepest divisions the UFC has ever seen. Lightweight has long been considered one of the toughest weight classes in mixed martial arts. Welterweight may be even more competitive today. Defending a championship against a young, undefeated caliber contender like Ian Garry in his athletic prime would immediately become one of the strongest victories on Islam's resume. Of course, critics always find something to say. Some have already tried to diminish parts of his lightweight title reign by pointing to Alexander Volkanovski's size, Dustin Poirier's age, or the circumstances surrounding certain matchups. But those arguments often ignore the full picture. Volkanovski may have been shorter, yet the physical gap between the two wasn't nearly as dramatic as many people like to claim. Because of the limited recovery time before the fight, Islam himself wasn't able to fully regain the size advantage people assumed he carried into the octagon. The reality is far more complicated than simple narratives. And that's exactly why another victory would make it even harder for anyone to question what Islam Makhachev has already accomplished, or what he may still be on the verge of achieving. The closer you look at Islam Makhachev's resume, the harder it becomes to dismiss what he's already accomplished. One of the biggest criticisms people still bring up is his first fight with Alexander Volkanovski. They argue that Volkanovski was undersized, suggesting the result wasn't as impressive because of the difference in size. But that argument leaves out one important detail. Normally, fighters have around 36 hours to recover and rehydrate before stepping into the cage. In that particular event, both men had significantly less time to put weight back on, which meant Islam never regained the physical advantage many people assumed he would have. By fight night, the size difference wasn't nearly as dramatic as the narrative suggests. And despite that, Islam still defeated the man who was widely considered the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, a champion competing at the absolute peak of his career. That's not a victory that should be minimized. If anything, it strengthened Islam's legacy. Which is exactly why a win over Ian Garry would carry even greater historical significance. It wouldn't simply add another championship defense to his record. It would place him inside one of the rarest groups in UFC history. Only a handful of champions have successfully defended titles across two different weight classes, and each of them earned a permanent place in the sport's history books. Interestingly, many fans believe Randy Couture belongs in that exclusive club as well. Technically, he doesn't. While Couture defended his heavyweight championship, his light heavyweight reign ended before he was ever able to successfully defend that belt. A bizarre doctor's stoppage caused by a cut left him without the opportunity to record a title defense in that division. It's a small technicality. But when history is written, details matter. That leaves an incredibly exclusive list. And if Islam defeats Ian Garry, his name will officially join it. What makes the achievement even more remarkable is the timing. Both lightweight and welterweight are packed with elite talent. There are no easy title defenses in either division, making success across both weight classes even more impressive than it appears on paper. Another victory would also continue a streak that very few champions have ever managed. 7 consecutive championship wins. Among today's active fighters, nobody has reached that number. Looking across UFC history, only the sport's greatest legends have climbed higher. Demetrius Johnson set an almost untouchable standard with 12 straight title victories. Anderson Silva and Georges St-Pierre each finished with 11. Jon Jones reached 9 championship wins, although one of those results was later ruled a no contest. Amanda Nunes stands at 8. With another successful defense, Islam would move alongside Jose Aldo and Valentina Shevchenko with 7 consecutive title victories inside the UFC. Even that comparison deserves context. Aldo's legendary reign actually stretches even further if his WEC championship defenses are included, but under UFC records alone, the two would stand level. And perhaps the most impressive part isn't just reaching those numbers. It's how Islam reached them. Many of the legends before him received championship opportunities far earlier in their UFC careers. Anderson Silva fought for the title in only his second UFC appearance after defeating Chris Laban. Georges St-Pierre also climbed into championship fights relatively early. The path was simply different. Islam didn't receive that opportunity nearly as quickly. He had to build his resume one victory at a time. 10 consecutive UFC wins before finally getting the chance to fight Charles Oliveira for the lightweight championship. 10 victories. No shortcuts. No fast track. By the time he finally reached the belt, he had already eliminated nearly every contender placed in front of him. That makes his rise feel very different from many champions who came before him. Every milestone has been earned the hard way. And that's exactly why this next fight feels like far more than another title defense. For many fans, it represents the moment where statistics stop being impressive and start becoming undeniable. The greatest of all time debate has always been one of the most passionate discussions in mixed martial arts. For years, the same names have dominated that conversation. Jon Jones, Georges St-Pierre, Demetrius Johnson. Occasionally, another legendary champion enters the debate before eventually falling away. Very few remain there permanently. Islam Makhachev now stands on the edge of joining that conversation for good. Some people already believe he's earned that place. Others argue he still needs another signature victory before belonging beside those legends. A win over Ian Garry could erase much of that debate. It wouldn't automatically crown him as the greatest fighter the sport has ever seen. But it would become almost impossible to leave his name out whenever the GOAT discussion begins. For many analysts, this fight represents the turning point. The victory that transforms an all-time great champion into an all-time great legacy. Some even believe it would be enough to move Islam ahead of Georges St-Pierre on the historical list, a ranking that, for years, many experts never imagined changing. For nearly a decade, the names at the very top have remained almost untouched. Jon Jones, Georges St-Pierre, Demetrius Johnson. Those have been the benchmarks every new generation has tried to reach. Now, for the first time in years, Islam Makhachev is knocking on that same door. And if he walks away from this fight with another championship victory, the only name left standing directly above him may be Jon Jones himself. And once Islam reaches that point, the conversation changes completely. The question is no longer whether he belongs among the all-time greats, it's whether anyone, including Jon Jones, can still remain ahead of him. So what would it actually take for Islam to surpass Jon Jones? That's where the conversation becomes far more interesting. For many fans, defeating Ian Garry wouldn't make Islam the greatest fighter in MMA history overnight. But it would move him one giant step closer. If he gets past Garry, the next chapter of his career could define his entire legacy. Imagine what comes after. Potential matchups against the UFC's next generation of elite contenders, fighters entering their physical prime with styles capable of testing every aspect of Islam's game. Names like Michael Morales, Carlos Prates, Shavkat Rakhmonov or Sean Brady. Each one presents a completely different puzzle. And that's what makes the road ahead so fascinating. Ian Garry is known for his composure, exceptional fight IQ, and ability to make smart decisions over 5 rounds. He's the kind of fighter who forces opponents to think as much as they fight. Carlos Prates offers a completely different danger. Few welterweights possess his level of striking power. Every exchange carries genuine knockout potential, meaning a single mistake could change everything in an instant. Then there's Michael Morales, an undefeated athlete with remarkable size, speed, and athleticism for the division. Standing across from someone with those physical advantages creates challenges that can't simply be ignored. And Sean Brady represents perhaps the ultimate grappling test. Against almost anyone else, Brady's wrestling and ground control would be viewed as his greatest strengths. Against Islam, they become the biggest question marks. Could Brady take him down? Could he control the man who has spent years dominating some of the best grapplers in the world? Or would Islam once again prove that his wrestling exists on an entirely different level? Those are the kinds of matchups that truly build legendary careers. Not because they're easy, but because every opponent threatens you in a completely different way. One tests your striking. Another tests your wrestling. Another challenges your size. Another pushes your fight IQ. If Islam continues defeating opponents with that level of variety, the resume starts becoming almost impossible to criticize. And that's where the GOAT debate begins to shift. Imagine the numbers that would follow. 10 consecutive championship victories. A figure that would surpass Jon Jones' official total. Successful title defenses across 2 of the UFC's toughest weight classes. Not just one defense in each division, but multiple successful reigns against elite competition. That's something the sport has never truly seen before. Then there's the winning streak itself. Breaking Anderson Silva's record would already be historic. But continuing beyond it would elevate the achievement even further. A 20-fight UFC winning streak wouldn't simply edge past the previous record. It would completely redefine it. Think about that for a moment. 20 consecutive victories inside the toughest promotion in mixed martial arts. 20 different nights where the world's best fighters failed to solve the puzzle. In a sport where one mistake can erase years of momentum. That level of consistency borders on unbelievable. Which is why so many people believe this fight with Ian Garry represents far more than another championship defense. It's the beginning of a completely different conversation. If Islam wins, many fans will no longer ask whether he belongs among the greatest fighters ever. Instead, they'll start debating exactly where he belongs. For some, another victory would already move him ahead of Georges St-Pierre and place him firmly behind only Jon Jones. Others will want to see a few more title defenses before making that leap. Either way, the discussion changes forever. That's what makes this moment so unique. Ian Garry isn't important simply because of his name. He's important because of what defeating him represents. History doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives disguised as just another title fight. But this doesn't feel like just another title fight. It feels like the beginning of a legacy that could redefine an entire generation of mixed martial arts. Of course, none of those records, none of those milestones, none of those GOAT conversations matter unless Islam first gets past Ian Garry. And that may be easier said than done. Garry is younger, naturally bigger, exceptionally intelligent inside the cage. He's exactly the kind of challenger capable of ruining history before it's ever written. The same is true for every contender waiting after him. Every future opponent will likely have advantages in size, reach, or physicality. That raises one fascinating question. Can Islam's elite wrestling, relentless pressure, and complete mixed martial arts skill set continue overcoming opponents who are naturally larger than him? If the answer is yes, the road to becoming the greatest fighter in MMA history may already be unfolding before our eyes. And if that happens, future generations won't remember this fight simply as another successful title defense. They'll remember it as the night Islam Makhachev's journey toward becoming the greatest of all time truly became impossible to ignore.